Autobiography of a Yogi. By Paramahansa Yogananda. Chapter 22. The Heart of a Stone Image. As a loyal Hindu wife, I do not wish to complain of my husband. But I yearn to see him turn from his materialistic views. He delights in ridiculing the pictures of saints in my meditation room. Dear brother, I have deep faith that you can help him. Will you? My eldest sister Roma gazed beseechingly at me. I was paying a short visit at her Calcutta home on Girish Vidyaratna Lane. Her plea touched me, for she had exercised a profound spiritual influence over my early life, and had lovingly tried to fill the void left in the family circle by mother's death. Beloved sister, of course I will do anything I can. I smiled, eager to lift the gloom plainly visible on her face, in contrast to her usual calm and cheerful expression. Roma and I sat a while in silent prayer for guidance. A year earlier, my sister had asked me to initiate her into Kriya Yoga, in which she was making notable progress. An inspiration seized me. Tomorrow, I said, I am going to the Dakshineshvar temple. Please come with me, and persuade your husband to accompany us. I feel that in the vibrations of that holy place, Divine Mother will touch his heart. But don't disclose our object in wanting him to go. Sister agreed hopefully. Very early the next morning I was pleased to find that Roma and her husband were in readiness for the trip. As our hackney carriage rattled along Upper Circular Road toward Dakshineshvar, my brother-in-law, Satish Chandra Bose, amused himself by deriding spiritual gurus of the past, present, and future. I noticed that Roma was quietly weeping. Sister, cheer up. I whispered. Don't give your husband the satisfaction of believing that we take his mockery seriously. Mukunda, how can you admire worthless humbugs? Satish was saying. A sadhu's very appearance is repulsive. He is either as thin as a skeleton, or as unholily fat as an elephant. I shouted with laughter. My good-natured reaction was annoying to Satish. He retired into sullen silence. As our cab entered the Dakshineshvar grounds, he grinned sarcastically. This excursion, I suppose, is a scheme to reform me. As I turned away without reply, he caught my arm. Young Mr. Monk, he said, don't forget to make proper arrangements with the temple authorities to provide for our noon meal. I am going to meditate now. Do not worry about your lunch, I replied sharply. Divine Mother will look after it. I don't trust Divine Mother to do a single thing for me. But I do hold you responsible for my food. Satish's tones were threatening. I proceeded alone to the colonnaded hall which fronts the large temple of Kali, or Mother Nature. Selecting a shady spot near one of the pillars, I arranged my body in the lotus posture. Although it was only about 7 o'clock, the morning sun would soon be oppressive. The world receded as I became devotionally entranced. My mind was concentrated on Goddess Kali, whose image at Dakshineshvar had been the special object of adoration by the great master, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. In answer to his anguished demands, the stone image of this very temple had often taken a living form and conversed with him. Silent Mother with stony heart, I prayed, thou becamest filled with life at the request of thy beloved devotee Ramakrishna, why dost thou not also heed the wails of this yearning son of thine? My aspiring zeal increased boundlessly, accompanied by a divine peace. Yet, when 5 hours had passed, and the goddess whom I was inwardly visualizing had made no response, I felt slightly disheartened. Sometimes it is a test by God to delay the fulfillment of prayers. But he eventually appears to the persistent devotee in whatever form he holds dear. A devout Christian sees Jesus, a Hindu beholds Krishna, or the goddess Kali, or an expanding light if his worship takes an impersonal turn. Reluctantly I opened my eyes, and saw that the temple doors were being locked by a priest, in conformance with the noon-hour custom. I rose from my secluded seat under the open, roofed hall, and stepped into the courtyard. Its stone floor was scorching under the midday sun, my bare feet were painfully burned. Divine Mother, I silently remonstrated, thou didst not come to me in vision, and now thou art hidden in the temple behind closed doors. I wanted to offer a special prayer to thee today on behalf of my brother-in-law. My inward petition was instantly acknowledged. First, a delightful cold wave descended over my back and under my feet, banishing all discomfort. Then, to my amazement, the temple became greatly magnified. Its large door slowly opened, revealing the stone figure of Goddess Kali. Gradually it changed into a living form, smilingly nodding in greeting, thrilling me with joy indescribable. As if by a mystic syringe, the breath was withdrawn from my lungs, my body became very still, though not inert. An ecstatic enlargement of consciousness followed. I could see clearly for several miles over the Ganges River to my left, and beyond the temple into the entire Dakshineshvar precincts. The walls of all buildings glimmered transparently, through them I observed people walking to and fro over distant acres. Though I was breathless and my body in a strangely quiet state, yet I was able to move my hands and feet freely. For several minutes I experimented in closing and opening my eyes, in either state I saw distinctly the whole Dakshineshvar panorama. Spiritual sight, X-ray-like, penetrates into all matter, the divine eye is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. I realized anew, standing there in the sunny courtyard, that when man ceases to be a prodigal child of God, engrossed in a physical world indeed dream, baseless as a bubble, he inherits his eternal realms. If escapism be a need of man, cramped in his narrow personality, can any escape compare with the majesty of omnipresence? In my sacred experience at Dakshineshvar, the only extraordinarily enlarged objects were the temple and the form of the goddess. Everything else appeared in its normal dimensions, although each was enclosed in a halo of mellow light white, blue, and pastel rainbow hues. My body seemed to be of ethereal substance, ready to levitate. Fully conscious of my material surroundings, I was looking about me and taking a few steps without disturbing the continuity of the blissful vision. Behind the temple walls I suddenly glimpsed my brother-in-law as he sat under the thorny branches of a sacred bel tree. I could effortlessly discern the course of his thoughts. Somewhat uplifted under the holy influence of Dakshineshvar, his mind yet held unkind reflections about me. I turned directly to the gracious form of the goddess. Divine Mother, I prayed, wilt thou not spiritually change my sister's husband? The beautiful figure, hitherto silent, spoke at last, thy wish is granted. I looked happily at Satish. As though instinctively aware that some spiritual power was at work, he rose resentfully from his seat on the ground. I saw him running behind the temple, he approached me, shaking his fist. The all-embracing vision disappeared. No longer could I see the glorious goddess, the towering temple was reduced to its ordinary size, minus its transparency. Again my body sweltered under the fierce rays of the sun. I jumped to the shelter of the pillared hall, where Satish pursued me angrily. I looked at my watch. It was 1 o'clock, the divine vision had lasted an hour. You little fool, my brother-in-law blurted out, you have been sitting there cross-legged and cross-eyed for 6 hours. I have gone back and forth watching you. Where is my food? Now the temple is closed, you failed to notify the authorities, we are left without lunch. The exaltation I had felt at the goddess' presence was still vibrant within my heart. I was emboldened to exclaim, Divine Mother will feed us. Satish was beside himself with rage. Once and for all, he shouted, I would like to see your Divine Mother giving us food here without prior arrangements. His words were hardly uttered when a temple priest crossed the courtyard and joined us. Son, he addressed me, I have been observing your face serenely glowing during hours of meditation. I saw the arrival of your party this morning, and felt a desire to put aside ample food for your lunch. It is against the temple rules to feed those who do not make a request beforehand, but I have made an exception for you. I thanked him, and gazed straight into Satish's eyes. He flushed with emotion, lowering his gaze in silent repentance. When we were served a lavish meal, including out-of-season mangoes, I noticed that my brother-in-law's appetite was meager. He was bewildered, diving deep into the ocean of thought. On the return journey to Calcutta, Satish, with softened expression, occasionally glanced at me pleadingly. But he did not speak a single word after the moment the priest had appeared to invite us to lunch, as though in direct answer to Satish's challenge. The following afternoon I visited my sister at her home. She greeted me affectionately. Dear brother, she cried, what a miracle! Last evening my husband wept openly before me. Beloved Devi, he said, I am happy beyond expression that this reforming scheme of your brother's has wrought a transformation. I am going to undo every wrong I have done you. From tonight we will use our large bedroom only as a place of worship, your small meditation room shall be changed into our sleeping quarters. I am sincerely sorry that I have ridiculed your brother. For the shameful way I have been acting, I will punish myself by not talking to Mukunda until I have progressed in the spiritual path. Deeply I will seek the Divine Mother from now on, someday I must surely find her. Years later, I visited my brother-in-law in Delhi. I was overjoyed to perceive that he had developed highly in self-realization, and had been blessed by the vision of Divine Mother. During my stay with him, I noticed that Satish secretly spent the greater part of every night in divine meditation, though he was suffering from a serious ailment, and was engaged during the day at his office. The thought came to me that my brother-in-law's lifespan would not be a long one. Roma must have read my mind. Dear brother, she said, I am well, and my husband is sick. Nevertheless, I want you to know that, as a devoted Hindu wife, I am going to be the first one to die. It won't be long now before I pass on. Taken aback at her ominous words, I yet realized their sting of truth. I was in America when my sister died, about a year after her prediction. My youngest brother Bishnu later gave me the details. Roma and Satish were in Calcutta at the time of her death, Bishnu told me. That morning she dressed herself in her bridal finery. Why this special costume? Satish inquired. This is my last day of service to you on earth, Roma replied. A short time later she had a heart attack. As her son was rushing out for aid, she said, Son, do not leave me. It is no use, I shall be gone before a doctor could arrive. 10 minutes later, holding the feet of her husband in reverence, Roma consciously left her body, happily and without suffering. Satish became very reclusive after his wife's death, Bishnu continued. One day he and I were looking at a large smiling photograph of Roma. Why do you smile? Satish suddenly exclaimed, as though his wife were present. You think you were clever in arranging to go before me. I shall prove that you cannot long remain away from me, soon I shall join you. Although at this time Satish had fully recovered from his sickness, and was enjoying excellent health, he died without apparent cause shortly after his strange remark before the photograph. Thus prophetically passed my dearly beloved eldest sister Roma, and her husband Satish, he who changed at Dakshineshwar from an ordinary worldly man to a silent saint. Autobiography of a Yogi. By Paramahansa Yogananda. Chapter 23. I received my university degree. You ignore your textbook assignments in philosophy. No doubt you are depending on an unlaborious intuition to get you through the examinations. But unless you apply yourself in a more scholarly manner, I shall see to it that you don't pass this course. Professor D.C. Ghoshal of Serampuri College was addressing me sternly. If I failed to pass his final written classroom test, I would be ineligible to take the conclusive examinations. These are formulated by the faculty of Calcutta University, which numbers Serampuri College among its affiliated branches. A student in Indian universities who is unsuccessful in one subject in the AB finals must be examined anew in all his subjects the following year. My instructors at Serampuri College usually treated me with kindness, not untinged by an amused tolerance. Mukunda is a bit overdrunk with religion. Thus summing me up, they tactfully spared me the embarrassment of answering classroom questions. They trusted the final written tests to eliminate me from the list of AB candidates. The judgment passed by my fellow students was expressed in their nickname for me, Mad Monk. I took an ingenious step to nullify Professor Ghoshal's threat to me of failure in philosophy. When the results of the final tests were about to be publicly announced, I asked a classmate to accompany me to the professor's study. "Come along, I want a witness," I told my companion. "I shall be very much disappointed if I have not succeeded in outwitting the instructor." Professor Ghoshal shook his head after I had inquired what rating he had given my paper. "You are not among those who have passed," he said in triumph. He hunted through a large pile on his desk. "Your paper isn't here at all, you have failed, in any case, through non-appearance at the examination." I chuckled. "Sir, I was there. May I look through the stack myself?" The professor, nonplussed, gave his permission. I quickly found my paper, where I had carefully omitted any identification mark except my roll call number. Unwarned by the red flag of my name, the instructor had given a high rating to my answers even though they were unembellished by textbook quotations. Seeing through my trick, he now thundered, "Sheer brazen luck." He added hopefully, "You are sure to fail in the AB finals." For the tests in my other subjects, I received some coaching, particularly from my dear friend and cousin, Prabhas Chandra Ghose, son of my uncle Sarada. I staggered painfully but successfully with the lowest possible passing marks through all my final tests. Now, after 4 years of college, I was eligible to sit for the AB examinations. Nevertheless, I hardly expected to avail myself of the privilege. The Serampuri College finals were child's play compared to the stiff ones which would be set by Calcutta University for the AB degree. My almost daily visits to Sri Yukteswar had left me little time to enter the college halls. There it was my presence rather than my absence that brought forth ejaculations of amazement from my classmates. My customary routine was to set out on my bicycle about 9:30 in the morning. In one hand I would carry an offering for my guru, a few flowers from the garden of my Panthai boarding house. Greeting me affably, Master would invite me to lunch. I invariably accepted with alacrity, glad to banish the thought of college for the day. After hours with Sri Yukteswar, listening to his incomparable flow of wisdom, or helping with ashram duties, I would reluctantly depart around midnight for the Panthai. Occasionally I stayed all night with my guru, so happily engrossed in his conversation that I scarcely noticed when darkness changed into dawn. One night about 11 o'clock, as I was putting on my shoes in preparation for the ride to the boarding house, Master questioned me gravely. "When do your AB examinations start?" "5 days hence, sir." I hope you are in readiness for them. Transfixed with alarm, I held one shoe in the air. Sir, I protested, you know how my days have been passed with you rather than with the professors. How can I enact a farce by appearing for those difficult finals? Sri Yukteswar's eyes were turned piercingly on mine. You must appear. His tone was coldly peremptory. We should not give cause for your father and other relatives to criticize your preference for ashram life. Just promise me that you will be present for the examinations, answer them the best way you can. Uncontrollable tears were coursing down my face. I felt that Master's command was unreasonable, and that his interest was, to say the least, belated. I will appear if you wish it, I said amidst sobs. But no time remains for proper preparation. Under my breath I muttered, I will fill up the sheets with your teachings in answer to the questions. When I entered the hermitage the following day at my usual hour, I presented my bouquet with a certain mournful solemnity. Sri Yukteswar laughed at my woebegone air. Mukunda, has the Lord ever failed you, at an examination or elsewhere? No, sir, I responded warmly. Grateful memories came in a revivifying flood. Not laziness but burning zeal for God has prevented you from seeking college honors, my guru said kindly. After a silence, he quoted, Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. For the 1000th time, I felt my burdens lifted in Master's presence. When we had finished our early lunch, he suggested that I return to the Panthai. Does your friend, Romesh Chandratud, still live in your boarding house? Yes, sir. Get in touch with him, the Lord will inspire him to help you with the examinations. Very well, sir, but Romesh is unusually busy. He is the honor man in our class, and carries a heavier course than the others. Master waved aside my objections. Romesh will find time for you. Now go. I bicycled back to the Panthai. The first person I met in the boarding house compound was the scholarly Romesh. As though his days were quite free, he obligingly agreed to my diffident request. Of course, I am at your service. He spent several hours of that afternoon and of succeeding days in coaching me in my various subjects. I believe many questions in English literature will be centered in the root of Childe Harold, he told me. We must get an atlas at once. I hastened to the home of my uncle Sarada and borrowed an atlas. Romesh marked the European map at the places visited by Byron's romantic traveler. A few classmates had gathered around to listen to the tutoring. Romesh is advising you wrongly, one of them commented to me at the end of a session. Usually only 50% of the questions are about the books, the other half will involve the authors' lives. When I sat for the examination in English literature the following day, my first glance at the questions caused tears of gratitude to pour forth, wetting my paper. The classroom monitor came to my desk and made a sympathetic inquiry. My guru foretold that Romesh would help me, I explained. Look, the very questions dictated to me by Romesh are here on the examination sheet. Fortunately for me, there are very few questions this year on English authors, whose lives are wrapped in deep mystery so far as I am concerned. My boarding house was in an uproar when I returned. The boys who had been ridiculing Romesh's method of coaching looked at me in awe, almost deafening me with congratulations. During the week of the examinations, I spent many hours with Romesh, who formulated questions that he thought were likely to be set by the professors. Day by day, Romesh's questions appeared in almost the same form on the examination sheets. The news was widely circulated in the college that something resembling a miracle was occurring, and that success seemed probable for the absent-minded mad monk. I made no attempt to hide the facts of the case. The local professors were powerless to alter the questions, which had been arranged by Calcutta University. Thinking over the examination in English literature, I realized one morning that I had made a serious error. One section of the questions had been divided into two parts of A or B and C or D. Instead of answering one question from each part, I had carelessly answered both questions in Group I, and had failed to consider anything in Group II. The best mark I could score in that paper would be 33, 3 less than the passing mark of 36. I rushed to master and poured out my troubles. "Sir, I have made an unpardonable blunder. I don't deserve the divine blessings through Ramesh, I am quite unworthy." "Cheer up, Mukunda." Sri Yukteswar's tones were light and unconcerned. He pointed to the blue vault of the heavens. "It is more possible for the sun and moon to interchange their positions in space than it is for you to fail in getting your degree." I left the hermitage in a more tranquil mood, though it seemed mathematically inconceivable that I could pass. I looked once or twice apprehensively into the sky. The Lord of Day appeared to be securely anchored in his customary orbit. As I reached the Panthai, I overheard a classmate's remark, "I have just learned that this year, for the first time, the required passing mark in English literature has been lowered." I entered the boy's room with such speed that he looked up in alarm. I questioned him eagerly. "Long-haired monk," he said laughingly, "why this sudden interest in scholastic matters? Why cry in the 11th hour?" But it is true that the passing mark has just been lowered to 33 points. A few joyous leaps took me into my own room, where I sank to my knees and praised the mathematical perfections of my Divine Father. Every day I thrilled with the consciousness of a spiritual presence that I clearly felt to be guiding me through Ramesh. A significant incident occurred in connection with the examination in Bengali. Ramesh, who had touched little on that subject, called me back one morning as I was leaving the boarding house on my way to the examination hall. "There is Ramesh shouting for you," a classmate said to me impatiently. "Don't return, we shall be late at the hall." Ignoring the advice, I ran back to the house. "The Bengali examination is usually easily passed by our Bengali boys," Ramesh told me. "But I have just had a hunch that this year the professors have planned to massacre the students by asking questions from our ancient literature." My friend then briefly outlined two stories from the life of Vidyasagar, a renowned philanthropist. I thanked Ramesh and quickly bicycled to the college hall. The examination sheet in Bengali proved to contain two parts. The first instruction was, "Write 2 instances of the charities of Vidyasagar." As I transferred to the paper the lore that I had so recently acquired, I whispered a few words of thanksgiving that I had heeded Ramesh's last-minute summons. Had I been ignorant of Vidyasagar's benefactions to mankind, including ultimately myself, I could not have passed the Bengali examination. Failing in one subject, I would have been forced to stand examination anew in all subjects the following year. Such a prospect was understandably abhorrent. The second instruction on the sheet read, "Write an essay in Bengali on the life of the man who has most inspired you." Gentle reader, I need not inform you what man I chose for my theme. As I covered page after page with praise of my guru, I smiled to realize that my muttered prediction was coming true, "I will fill up the sheets with your teachings." I had not felt inclined to question Ramesh about my course in philosophy. Trusting my long training under Sri Yukteswar, I safely disregarded the textbook explanations. The highest mark given to any of my papers was the one in philosophy. My score in all other subjects was just barely within the passing mark. It is a pleasure to record that my unselfish friend Ramesh received his own degree cum laude. Father was wreathed in smiles at my graduation. "I hardly thought you would pass, Mukunda," he confessed. You spend so much time with your guru. Master had indeed correctly detected the unspoken criticism of my father. For years I had been uncertain that I would ever see the day when an AB would follow my name. I seldom use the title without reflecting that it was a divine gift, conferred on me for reasons somewhat obscure. Occasionally I hear college men remark that very little of their crammed knowledge remained with them after graduation. That admission consoles me a bit for my undoubted academic deficiencies. On the day I received my degree from Calcutta University, I knelt at my guru's feet and thanked him for all the blessings flowing from his life into mine. "Get up, Mukunda," he said indulgently. "The Lord simply found it more convenient to make you a graduate than to rearrange the sun and moon."